The Mongol Empire Explained. Complete History Documentary. Part 3. The Golden Age of the Mongol Empire, 1241 to 1279. Introduction. By the middle of the 13th century, the Mongol Empire had become the largest contiguous land empire in history. From the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, millions of people lived under Mongol rule. The empire had been built through extraordinary military conquest. Now it faced a different challenge. Could such a vast empire be governed? Could dozens of cultures, religions, and languages exist under one empire? The answers would come under a new generation of Mongol rulers. Among them, one leader would stand above all others. His name was Kublai Khan. Chapter 21. The Empire after Genghis Khan. After the death of Ogedei Khan in 1241, the Mongol Empire entered a period of political uncertainty. Different branches of Genghis Khan's family competed for power. Several years passed before a new great Khan was chosen. Despite these political struggles, the empire continued expanding. Mongol generals governed territories stretching across Asia and Eastern Europe. The empire gradually became divided into several major regions. The Golden Horde ruled the Russian lands. The Chagatai Khanate controlled much of Central Asia. The Ilkhanate governed Persia and the Middle East. In Mongolia, the Great Khan remained the symbolic leader of the entire empire. Although these regions cooperated, each gradually developed its own identity. The Mongol Empire remained united in name, but its future depended on strong leadership. That leadership would soon come from one remarkable ruler. Chapter 22. The Rise of Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan was the grandson of Genghis Khan. Unlike many Mongol princes, he admired not only warfare, but also learning, administration, and culture. He studied Chinese traditions and surrounded himself with skilled advisors. After years of political rivalry, Kublai became the Great Khan in 1260. His greatest ambition was to complete the conquest of China. At the time, southern China remained under the powerful Song dynasty. The Song possessed wealthy cities, advanced technology, and a strong navy. Defeating them would be one of the greatest military challenges in Mongol history. Kublai carefully prepared. He strengthened the army. He expanded the navy. He recruited engineers and military experts from many different cultures. Unlike earlier Mongol rulers, Kublai believed that governing an empire required more than military strength. It required stable administration and economic prosperity. His reign marked the beginning of a new chapter in Mongol history. Chapter 23. The Yuan Dynasty. In 1271, Kublai Khan officially founded the Yuan dynasty in China. This marked the first time that all of China would eventually come under the rule of a foreign dynasty. Kublai moved the imperial capital to Dadu, present-day Beijing. He built magnificent palaces, government offices, and new roads. Chinese officials continued serving in many government positions. Taxes were reorganized. Agriculture was encouraged. Trade expanded across the empire. In 1279, after years of fierce fighting, the Song dynasty was finally defeated. For the first time in centuries, all of China was united under a single ruler. Kublai Khan had achieved what many believed impossible. The Mongol Empire reached the height of its territorial power. It ruled millions of people across the largest land empire the world had ever known. Chapter 24. Pax Mongolica. By the late 13th century, the Mongol Empire stretched across most of Eurasia. Although the empire was divided into several khanates, trade routes remained open and protected. Historians call this period the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace. For the first time in centuries, merchants could travel thousands of kilometers with far greater safety than before. Mongol soldiers guarded the major trade routes. Bandits were hunted down. Roads and bridges were repaired. Caravan stations were built across the empire. Travelers could rest, change horses, and continue their journey. Trade flourished like never before. Silk from China, spices from India, glass from the Middle East, silver from Europe. These valuable goods crossed continents under Mongol protection. The empire that had been built through war was now connecting civilizations through commerce. Chapter 25. The Silk Road and Marco Polo. The Silk Road reached its greatest importance during Mongol rule. Thousands of merchants traveled between east and west. Along with goods, they carried ideas, inventions, religions, and cultures. One of the most famous travelers was the Venetian merchant Marco Polo. In 1275, he arrived at the court of Kublai Khan. According to his writings, Kublai welcomed foreign visitors and valued talented people regardless of their nationality. Marco Polo spent many years traveling across China. He described enormous cities, advanced canals, paper money, and the wealth of the Yuan dynasty. When he returned to Europe, his book introduced millions of Europeans to the wonders of Asia. Although historians continue to debate some details of his journey, his account inspired generations of explorers. Centuries later, explorers such as Christopher Columbus carried copies of Marco Polo's book while searching for new routes to Asia. The Mongol Empire had helped bring the civilizations of Europe and Asia closer together than ever before. Chapter 26. Religion, Science, and Cultural Exchange. Unlike many medieval empires, the Mongols generally allowed religious freedom. Within the empire lived Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, and followers of traditional Mongol beliefs. As long as people remained loyal to the empire and paid taxes, they were usually free to practice their own religion. This atmosphere encouraged cultural exchange. Scientists, doctors, engineers, artists, and scholars traveled safely across Eurasia. Chinese inventions such as papermaking, printing, gunpowder, and the compass spread westward. At the same time, mathematical knowledge, astronomy, medicine, and artistic ideas from the Islamic world reached East Asia. The Mongol postal system, known as the Yam, allowed official messages to travel rapidly across thousands of kilometers. Relay stations with fresh horses ensured fast communication throughout the empire. The Mongols had created one of the most connected networks the medieval world had ever seen. Their empire became a bridge between civilizations, helping ideas travel farther and faster than ever before. Chapter 27. The Black Death. By the early 14th century, the Mongol Empire connected Asia, the Middle East, and Europe through an enormous network of trade routes. Merchants, travelers, soldiers, and caravans crossed the Silk Road every day. But along with silk, spices, and precious metals, another invisible passenger was also traveling: a deadly disease. Historians believe the Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, spread across Eurasia through trade routes during the 1340s. The disease moved rapidly from Asia toward the Middle East and Europe. Entire villages disappeared. Cities lost a large portion of their population. Some regions lost nearly half of their people within only a few years. Trade slowed dramatically. Agriculture suffered. Governments struggled to maintain order. Although the Mongols did not create the plague, their vast trade network unintentionally allowed it to spread more quickly than ever before. The empire that had united continents also became part of one of history's greatest pandemics. Chapter 28. The Fall of the Mongol Empire. As the decades passed, the Mongol Empire became increasingly divided. The four major khanates began acting independently. Each developed its own government, culture, and political goals. Communication between them weakened. Trade declined. Internal conflicts became more frequent. In China, the Yuan dynasty faced growing economic problems. Floods, famine, heavy taxes, and widespread corruption caused public anger. Rebellions spread across the countryside. The most powerful was the Red Turban Rebellion. After years of fighting, the rebel leader Zhu Yuanzhang captured the Mongol capital. In 1368, the Yuan dynasty collapsed. Zhu Yuanzhang founded the Ming dynasty, ending nearly 100 years of Mongol rule in China. Although Mongol rulers continued to govern parts of Central Asia and Russia for many years, the unified Mongol Empire had come to an end. The greatest land empire in history had finally fallen. H1, Chapter 29, The Legacy of the Mongols. The Mongol Empire disappeared, but its influence remained. It transformed the history of Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. The Mongols connected civilizations through the Silk Road. Trade flourished across continents. Ideas, inventions, religions, and technologies spread farther than ever before. Paper, printing, gunpowder, and the compass reached new regions. Diplomats and merchants traveled with greater safety. Postal systems, military organization, and methods of administration influenced many later governments. The Mongols also changed warfare forever. Their use of speed, intelligence, discipline, and psychological tactics became models for future military commanders. Yet their legacy was also marked by destruction. Many cities were devastated during the Mongol conquests. Countless lives were lost in wars that reshaped entire civilizations. History remembers the Mongols as both brilliant empire builders and fearsome conquerors. Their story remains one of the most complex in world history. The empire that changed the world. The story of the Mongol Empire is more than the story of conquest. It is the story of survival, of leadership, of innovation, and of transformation. A young boy named Temujin, abandoned on the harsh Mongolian steppe, rose to become Genghis Khan, one of the greatest military leaders in history. His descendants expanded his vision into the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever known. For more than a century, the Mongols connected East and West as never before. They reshaped trade, diplomacy, warfare, and cultural exchange across Eurasia. Their empire eventually disappeared, but its influence can still be seen today in international trade routes, military strategy, historical scholarship, and the cultural connections between Europe and Asia. More than 800 years later, the legacy of the Mongol Empire continues to remind us that a single leader, a united people, and a bold vision can change the course of history forever.